I bounced this from Wednesday because I was starting to feel unwell, and actually I feel a little bit worse today. So if I pause at any point, it might be to cough, and if I cough without pausing, then apologies. Today we are going to look at a couple of concepts that I think are coaching jargon. But before we do that, I'll hit pause on the music. So, I think having worked in digital, I got so used to a life of jargon. We're surrounded by click-through rates, BIMI, all DMARC. I've just dropped my mouse, so apologies. So many powerful jargonous terms that I think I forget. And then when I speak to somebody that's in my family or out of the industry, then I realize that these are things that we use as shortcuts that make perfect sense to us and literally nobody else. And sometimes truth self falls into that concept, and speaking behind the mask falls into that. But we're going to cover those two concepts, why they matter in go-to-market roles like sales, marketing, partnerships, or anywhere else where you're working with people internally. So if you've ever felt the pressure to present that perfect version of yourself in front of clients or colleagues, then this session's for you. We're going to explore how showing up as something that feels closer to your true self can build deeper bonds, more trust, better relationships, and better results. We're going to look at this through the lens of kind of mind and thought. So today I will open up with a story that's probably familiar to a lot of you, getting landed with a new client contact and the emotions that go with it. I'm going to look at onion and lotus, which I will tell you now is something I made up. So apologies if it seems strange, but that is how my mind works. And then we're going to look at the masks that we wear, how we can go beyond those masks, and like what you can do over the next week. To reset sometimes. So let's start with the story of the new client contact. Way back when, and I'm not going to say when and give away my age, I managed the affiliate program for a commercial bank. That meant that I worked across numerous digital channels and across the digital landscape to help small businesses find out about their accounts and apply for those accounts. And I worked with partners to do that. Those partners were paid per lead. That was the setup of the affiliate program. We did pretty well. We were consistent, like always on target for spend, month over month over month. And then they were acquired, and they were acquired by a high street bank that you would know. You might even bank with them. And my director and I went down to London, because we were based up in Manchester at the time, to go and see our new client contact. And that client contact was God of everything digital, otherwise known as the e-commerce director. However, as we went down to this meeting on the train and we get into the great big glass elevator, I can sense that my director is getting more and more tense, more and more nervous. I feel fine because I've been running our program. I know what the strategy is. I know what the deck says because I built it. So I'm in a pretty confident place going into it. In hindsight, I know that my director was probably thinking like they could just take this from us because we're a small, less than 50-person agency, and they're more likely to give it to their incumbent down the road. As it happens, that meeting goes really well. The God of everything digital is a lovely person, and they have the humility to say that, yes, they know so much about the e-commerce sector, but they didn't really know about how affiliate worked for B2B. And they also had the grace to tell us that we were doing a good job. So as we leave, my director turns to me and says, "Why were you so calm?" And the truth is, I didn't really think that I had a reason not to be. I just didn't really think about it. And I think there's kind of always that tension when you get a new client contact that you want to put on this persona. You want them to know that you're a safe pair of hands, and you want to think that you know absolutely everything there is to know about their account and their strategy. I felt that way going in, so I didn't really have the nervousness around it. But what I do want to do is just explore this again from thinking about living in onion mode or living in lotus mode. And living in is a bit of a stretch because at any one time we'll be in onion mode about something, lotus mode about something else. And the way that I think about onion mode is that it's like wrapping us in layers of unhelpful thought. In the coaching that I do, there's a man who's often quoted, who's a Scottish welder called Sid Banks, and he used to call this the little mind. This is where we second guess ourselves, we get stuck in over analysis, we operate from a place of fear and doubt. In sales, that might mean like we hesitate to reach out to a prospect because we're just worried about rejection. In other ways, it's where we are met by the stresses of life, those thoughts that swell. Will I hit target? My mortgage is going up. NPS scores seem really hard to maintain at the moment. I'm too nervous to do this presentation right now. My job is getting the better of me, and that dog is just barking too loudly. All of these layers of thought wrap around us like an onion and keep us small in the way that we play out. The alternative is lotus mode. We open up, we connect to our true self, who we are at our core. And who we are at our core, for me, is that person when we're not feeling those stresses, when we do feel in flow, when we trust our gut. In lotus mode, we feel fully resourced and like we can tap into and access unlimited creativity, unlimited fresh thinking. Think about that time when you meet an objection and you know that it's actually just an opportunity to go a bit deeper, unpick with a client, get really stuck in to kind of moving forward together. So when we think about true self in coaching mode, it's that resting, resilient person who doesn't feel like they have to perform or adapt to meet external expectations, where you know that you are enough and you can be rooted in clarity of thought, confidence, and your own deep rooted values. So that is how I think about onion and lotus. And if we go back to looking at that client meeting, my director was definitely in onion mode, and probably with good reason, because there is a lot to think about. But it was all kind of future casting anxieties that may or may not happen. And when we're in the present, then that kind of takes us out of onion mode a bit more. The e-commerce director, he was actually in kind of not only in lotus mode, but to think about Carol Dweck, he was in growth mindset around this. He knew that there was more to learn, and he was really happy to go through it and learn it and be really gracious and wonderful about it. And I was in lotus mode, but probably out of naivety, but also because I felt like I could tap into that creativity. I did not feel like it was a reason for me to go within myself, get nervous. I think I'm probably more nervous about doing this now, even though I have this understanding, than I was about doing that presentation. And when we think about making decisions in those two places, it's a really different outcome. So when I think about coaching people, I want to do as much as possible to unlock them into lotus mode so they can think about what do they want to bring into the world? What do they want to create? How would they like things to be in an ideal world? When we make decisions from onion mode, it's about escaping. We want to get rid of where we are now. It feels really heavy, really tense in the body. We're pushing away what we don't want in our life. And it also leads to avoidance. So last month, I just spoke about focus and procrastination. And onion mode really fuzzies us, keeps us unfocused, means it will avoid those things that we just don't feel we've got the mental energy to do. Dropping into lotus mode, we can create, we can pull opportunities towards us, bring into being we want to put out into the world, and make decisions from a place of ambition. That's how I think about those two playing into each other, and why, as much as possible, we want to connect with our true self, that lotus flower, and then work from there. So, similarly, we can wrap ourselves up behind a mask. And I'm intrigued to know, what masks do you wear? And I'm going to talk to you about this from two angles. It's not just the mask that you choose to put on, but the mask that other people bestow upon you. So I put a poll out on Monday to get a sense of where people's standpoint was on kind of working behind a mask in the workplace. These two polls, you can see they've got the same question. One of them was posted to my network. One of them was posted to the Brain Expansion group. So guys in my network, you are not changing. Like, you are not that bothered about being professional. And to be honest, I'm not surprised. I feel like tech loves a really well-timed swear word. And you often hear kind of sales leaders drop an F-bomb when the time is right. So really not surprised that it's not about staying professional. But it is about potentially adapting to clients, to who we're speaking to. And there's a core group that want to be their authentic selves. Within the Brain Expansion group, it was really interesting that there was a core group that were like, no, I am deadpan, I am professional. That is how you're going to meet me in the workplace. And then half that were like, no, this is how I come. I'm rolling out like this. This is my authentic self. When we were running these polls, what came up in the chat was the role of leaders. Have leaders created an environment where people feel psychologically safe enough to bring their authentic self to work? And that's interesting to me, because I think people often think about authentic self as like the person you are on the weekend, whereas I think about true self as the person you are without stress. So for me, the question is, are leaders creating an environment which is psychologically safe enough for people not to feel embroiled by judgment, stress, and to feel like they can perform at their best? When I worked at Makers, they were amazing at this. They had a chief joy officer. I was an in-house coach. There were in-house coaches. And also like yoga and many things to settle the mind. We'd start our meetings internally with breath work to bring people into the space and make it more conducive to tapping into that creativity. So, what masks do you wear? Are you the chipper salesperson who is always kind of the life and soul of the party? Are you the office cynic that's the critical friend, or the superhero that's there to rescue any project that might be going awry? Maybe you're the conspirator that's whispering away all the office gossip. But also, which masks are put on you? So I'm changing the names, but my youngest uncle will still be known as like little Jimmy. And I'll hear my uncle or my aunts say about my youngest uncle, oh, how's little Jimmy doing? He's in his 60s and still this mask is put upon him. But often our professional mask is the one that we put on to be polished, be credible, be confident. But sometimes it comes across as overconfidence, defensiveness, excessively formal. But the biggest problem is that when we speak behind the mask, people sense that something is off. It doesn't feel intuitively correct. There's an intelligence that we hold within our bodies that we often ignore, which is, how does that energy feel with somebody else? We speak from behind the mask to somebody else to speak behind their mask. That happens when we choose to avoid vulnerability, when we don't use rehearsed scripts, when we're happy to admit that maybe we don't know something and there's more to learn. So if you think about that time when you were working with a prospect, working with a colleague, and you just dropped the act and spoke honestly, what difference it made. The masks that we choose to wear are created by our perception, and often the masks that are put on us by other people go through that lens of our perception. So it's all created by thought. It's all created because we believe that we need it. But when we realize that we can let go of that, when we can be transient, when we can speak to a place of genuine presence, it not only makes our life easier, but it makes lives of those around us easier because they feel like they can do the same. So, to cut to the chase, having a mask often doesn't equal trust. It will disrupt trust, and trust is the foundation of great client relationships. Our customers buy from people and they buy from a belief in you. So when you drop the mask and operate from that true self, you become more relatable, more credible, and more trustworthy. So let's think about getting beyond the mask. What is it that you might want to do to move beyond the mask? First, embrace honesty and discomfort. It's part of life. We often stress ourselves out by thinking about how bad a conversation might go, only to realize that when we do it, it's not that bad. In my career, I can think about times where I have had to talk through price rises with a client, and I have absolutely dreaded having that conversation, only to find out that when we did it, it was fine. They understood. They understood that like business costs were going up, and actually they were really happy to swallow it. Early on in my career, I had a partner who, when anything was negative, he would send the most wicked emails back. And I learned pretty quickly to call him. But that first time that I called him, I was like, this is just going to be a horrible experience. And as soon as I picked up the phone to him, he'd appreciated the fact that I'd called to talk him through the nuances and was actually really nice on the phone. So I always learned that if there was something that had an air of controversy that I needed to communicate to the partners in that program, that there was someone I should pick up the phone to, because that's the way they preferred to be communicated with. And that was going to be a far better experience for us all. Next, and this ties into it, is understanding the natural communication style that you have and the person you're speaking to. Sometimes we'll interpret other people as being incredibly rude, or on the flip side, super wishy washy and just fluff, never cut to the chase. That isn't necessarily because the person's rude or the other person's wishy washy. It might be that actually the rude person is pragmatic. They want someone to cut to the chase. They do not want people to start with, hope this email meets you well, because they don't think the person cares. They just want to get to the chase. On the flip side of that is a person who thinks that's rude. They love a story. They're kind of a bit more of a people pleaser. They're amiable and they want someone to ask after their day. So it's knowing who you're speaking to. Are you speaking to somebody who's analytical and loves a detail? Are you speaking to an extrovert who Honestly, if you don't ask them about themselves, is going to get a bit offended. You'll naturally gel with the people that are similar to you. So knowing who's across the table and knowing where they tend to sit helps you drop the layer of thought, the layer of onion that you have about it, and go into a deeper connection with them because you know they're just pragmatic. They're not rude. They just want high level detail. Similarly, it's giving the gift of being heard. And I'm going to apologize if you heard that calendar notification because I thought I'd silence them all because I'm in work mode. But being present with somebody and giving them the time to think also helps move through transient thought. In sales, it can often be so tempting to jump into the silence, but it's in that silence that we are giving people the time to think, that we're really hearing, really listening, seeing what's going on with their body. And that whole body listening means that we can create more of the connection, more of an understanding of, does this benefit resonate with them? Maybe they want something else. Perhaps actually we need to look in a different direction if this is going to be right for them. And to that end, enjoy the silence. If they come back from that silence with, but how would I do X with what you're thinking? That can sound like an objection, that can send us straight back into our heads. But actually, if they're asking, how would I do X? Even if it sounds like an objection, it's more an indication that they're thinking, how would this fit into my world? And they're processing how your solution will work for them. So we've covered a bit of ground over the last 20 minutes. We've looked at confident decision making, whether you're making that decision from an onions mode or from lotus mode. We've looked at how masks can erode trust. And then we've looked at what you can do to wrestle that back. So embracing discomfort, taking communication styles into account, that idea of whole body listening. What are they not saying? What's their tonality like? All of those body elements that you see and sense and hear. And we've also looked at the power of silence. So what can you do to move beyond the mask over the next week or so? I'm going to challenge you to notice when you're putting a mask on. Only notice it, observe without judgment. And even that observation will help you drop that mask. See what happens when you lead a conversation from authenticity instead of performance. Because that's when clarity, connection, confidence arise, and you can tap into that deeper intelligence, the lotus energy that lives within all of us. And if you've made it this far with me, then I would like to offer a gift from me to you. And that's either a complimentary coaching session or a snapshot of how you're feeling right now about your work life and what you would want to work on over the next quarter. The difference being that complimentary coaching session is non-directive. I am not really going to help you out. We'll just look at some really deep, powerful questions to work out what you want from that time. Whereas our work life workshop is a set workshop. It is a snapshot of 6 or 8 different things, different aspects, and then prioritizing what's going to make a significant difference to your workplace well-being. Thank you so much for joining me. If you would like to get in touch, then hopefully we're connected on LinkedIn. If we're not, you can connect with me /Mish Anthony or slide into my DMs. You can email me at hello@michelleanthony.co.uk. Or if you drop into that website as well, /meet me will take you to my open calendar. You'll be able to book some time in. There are dates in for the complimentary coaching session and the work-life workshop. So just select one of those if that's what you would like to do. But if you do that, I would love you to drop me a DM or an email so I can look out for it. Thank you so much. Have an amazing weekend and let me know how you get on tapping into lotus mode and dropping your masks.